Thank you for signing up for our free training where we're going to teach you how to get $100,000 in 0% interest business credit within the next 30 days. Here's what we're going to be covering in this free training, which should take anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes. At the end, we're going to go over the credit tracking tool that we offered you for free as part of signing up for the training. The first thing we're going to do is introduce you to me and my partner Justin, what we do, who we are. We're going to show you the basics of credit because you need to understand personal credit before you can get into the world of business credit. We're going to show you the difference between FICO and Vantage scores. We're going to show you how to fix your identity on your credit reports so that you always get approvals and don't get denials because of your information being incorrect. We're going to show you how to optimize your credit profile so that you can be the best borrower possible to the banks. Then we're going to introduce you to business credit. Once you have that personal credit side established, we're going to show you how to correctly establish your business so you can get the most funding possible. We're going to teach you how to do credit card funding, which is how you're going to get that $100,000 at 0% within the next 30 days. And then we're going to teach you how to take that 0% interest business credit and leverage that to create passive income streams and to build assets. Okay, so who are we? I'm Jose Garcia. I'm the owner of Jose A. Garcia Consulting LLC. It's a personal finance coaching and credit coaching consulting company. I also was the founder of Credit Made Simple LLC, which was a credit repair company. I no longer own that company. We've decided to just teach the methods that we used in that company and in Justin's credit repair company to help you do this on your own without having to charge you the $1,500, $1,200, $800, whatever it is for credit repair. I have an average credit score across all three bureaus over 800. I've had over $250,000 in personal credit lines. I have over $1 million in business credit lines, which I use to leverage in my businesses. Use that credit to run a Amazon business that did over $1 million a year in revenue for 6 straight years. And then I also currently am focused on Section 8 real estate investing. So I buy single family homes, rent them via Section 8, which is guaranteed income. Usually you can buy these properties anywhere from $40,000 to $90,000 and be cash flowing, getting that $1,000 a month rent or more, depending on the area that you do this in. In terms of Justin, he currently owns Hypensee, which is a marketing agency. He owns Project Automation, which does Amazon FBA. He did Bullseye Funding. He started Moondusa NFT. He did Bullseye Credit Repair, and then he secured over $5 million in funding through Bullseye Funding, and he's helped over 1,000 people with their credit through Bullseye Credit Repair. And like I said, we're taking all the concept that we were applying in those businesses, credit repair funding, and we're teaching you how to do it on your own so that you can save that money and actually take the knowledge that you gain here and help other people do the same thing. So you can help people with their credit, you can help people with their funding. So that's what, the Project Fundable concept is all about. So why is credit so important in today's society? It affects so many things that you may not even know about. Your credit affects your insurance rates, your ability to buy a car, your ability to buy a house, the amount of interest that you're going to pay over your lifetime, which is dead money, right? You're just throwing that money away. And then the ability to get phone plans, ability to turn on utilities, and ability to obtain employment. The last one, they check your credit because if you're going to work for a company that has intellectual property, and you are in a ton of debt, you are a risk that at some point you may sell some information to try to get out of debt, right? And same thing with insurance. If you're not responsible with your money, the insurance company is going to say, okay, they're probably not a responsible driver, and they're going to be a bigger risk to us. So that's why credit is so important that you get it right, because it's going to cost you in the long run if you don't have your credit right. One thing we want people to get clear on before we teach you these concepts in this training, we need to make sure that you know what you want to do with this credit after you get it. So you can start a new business with the 0% interest business credit. You can fix your credit with what you learn and buy your dream home, buy your dream car. You can travel for free through travel hacking, and then you can scale a current business. So I used my credit to scale my Amazon business. And then I've used it to start a Shopify business. I've used it to set up, the real estate investment properties. And you can also purchase a business. So if your credit is good enough, you can actually get SBA loans and things like that to buy a business that already exists, that is already cash flowing. So that's why I said earlier, you're using this credit to buy assets or build passive income streams. The score that banks use the most is FICO. And that score is calculated in real time. So if you look at your FICO score today and then the bank pulls your credit tomorrow, your score can be different because it's calculated right when they pull your credit. The range for these scores is 350 to 850. 850 is great. That's a perfect credit score. But to us in this program, in Project Fundable, that means nothing to us because that means you are not using your credit. And what's the point of having great credit if you're not going to use it to do something and make money with it? That's what the rich people do. They use other people's money, which is credit pretty much, and they use that to get a return on that cheap money. So if you get a 0% interest business card, which is what we're going to show you how to do, then you can go use that, and anytime, and as long as you get a return over 0%, you made a return on that free money. There's different versions of FICO scores. There's FICO 8, which is mostly used right now, FICO 9, and then you have 542, which is used for mortgages and things like that. You do also get separate scores. So you may have a FICO score for auto loans. You are going to have a FICO score for mortgages. You're going to have a FICO score for credit cards. That is what banks are looking at, and they're just based on different models, right? So you may have a great score on auto loans, but your mortgage score may be bad because you had some late payments on your mortgages, or you've had bad history with a bank that you had a mortgage. So what makes up your FICO score? Your FICO score is made up of 5 different pieces or scoring factors. The biggest one is your payment history. And for that reason, you want to make sure that you get no late payments on your file. A late payment will only show on your credit file after you've been late for 30 days. So if you forget to make a payment and you pay it 5 days later, that's not going to show on your file. They are going to charge you a late fee, which you want to avoid because you're just throwing away money, but it's not going to affect your file. But once you pass 30 days without making that payment, that's when it's going to report to your credit file. So what I suggest to everyone, and I'll go over this on another slide, is you want to set up automatic payments on all of your credit cards and loans and everything that you have for at least the minimum payment. That way, if you forget to go in and manually pay your card that month, they pay the minimum payment. Yes, you're going to owe some interest because you didn't pay the balance down, but you didn't get a late payment. And just that can keep your score at a great level your entire life if you just never get a late payment. Because as you see, payment history makes up 35% of your score, and any little late payment is affecting the largest portion of your 500 points that you can get with FICO. The next factor is amounts owed. So this is called your credit utilization. That means how much of your credit are you using when the banks report your usage to the credit bureaus. So you want to keep this under 30%, right? That's bare minimum. And then the ideal is under 10%. So if you have a $10,000 credit card, you want to make sure that that card is always under $3,000. But ideally, it will always be under $1,000. You will never carry the balance higher than that, okay? And you want to do this across all of your cards. Loans don't matter. Loans, the utilization is not a big deal. Obviously, you know you signed up for a 5-year auto loan, so they expect you're just going to pay it over the 5 years. Installment loans, which are auto loans, house loans, personal loans, debt consolidation loans, those don't affect your credit utilization. The next factor is new credit. New credit is basically how often are you applying for credit? How many inquiries are you getting on your file? You don't want to be applying for credit often because then that's going to make the banks think that you're desperate for money and you're having financial issues, which means you won't be able to pay them back if they do give you credit. The next thing is length of history. So this is just how old your cards are and how old your accounts are. Unfortunately, there's not too much you can do to improve this. We'll go over one way, on another slide. But this is something that you want to establish a couple of cards and just keep them open forever. And that's going to help your average age get higher. If you go to a store and they offer you a card, you don't want to open that new card just to get 10% off because now you're going to affect your average age because that new card you open is going to be 0 months old. The next thing is credit mix. This is, you want to have a credit card, you want to have auto loans, house loans, personal loans, whatever it is. That's going to be the mix of your credit. And what I like to tell people is don't go get an auto loan if you can't afford a car. Don't go get a mortgage if you can't afford a house. Let that come naturally as you progress through your life. And that credit mix part is only 50 points. So you'll gain that over time. So as we discussed earlier, the perfect credit score is an 850. But how do you actually get a perfect credit score? To do that, you have to have no negative marks on your file. That means no collections, no bankruptcies, no late payments. You have to have no hard inquiries, which a hard inquiry is when a bank looks at your credit file. you will get an inquiry showing on the bureau that they pulled. And you want to basically have no inquiries in the last 12 months for you to have a perfect score. You also want to have an average credit age of 10 years or more. If you're 18 and you just got your first credit card, you can't really do anything about this part. So you'll have to work your way up there over the next, 10 years to get to that point. And you also want to have 21 or more diversified accounts. So this is the credit mix. You want to have auto loans, student loans, mortgage, all that stuff. And again, if you don't need to take out student loans, don't take them out. This will come naturally, and it includes closed accounts. So they're not expecting you to have 21 open loans and credit cards and stuff like that. You just need to have 21 showing on your file at some point to get a perfect credit score. And like I said earlier, I'm just repeating it again here. Although we'd love to have a perfect score, that isn't a great thing. Like, yes, it looks good and you can show it off to people, but that means you're not using your credit to take advantage of the opportunities that pop up throughout your lifetime. So for what we want to do in Project Fundable, which is leverage credit to make income, a 750 or better is going to be good enough. Like me, I hover around that 800, 790 credit score because I'm always using my credit to invest in things. So I don't expect to have an 850, and I don't care because anything over a 750 is going to get me approved for everything that I need to do. So how do we become the best borrower possible to the bank so that they can lend us money whenever we want it? To do that, we want to have a very fundable profile, credit profile. And to do that, we want 3 to 5 high value revolving accounts, which are typically credit cards. You're going to want to have at least one auto loan and at least one mortgage. And again, I always want to repeat this. Don't go out and get an auto loan. Don't go out and get a mortgage just to try to get the most fundable profile. Let that stuff come naturally, because you're going to need a car at some point, I'm sure, in your life, and you're going to buy a house at some point in your life. So just let that come naturally and then you'll get there. But for now, focus on the 3 to 5 high value revolving accounts or credit cards. What do we consider a high value revolving account? That means a credit card that is from one of the tier 1 banks. There's only 4 of them, and we'll go over that on the next slide. Or a card from a tier 2 or tier 3 bank that has a $10,000 limit or more, and it's 2 years or older. So let's go over the banking tiers now so that you can know what type of accounts will be considered high value accounts if you get these cards. So like I said, the tier 1 banks, there's only 4 of them, and those banks are Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citibank. So if you get a card from any of these 4 banks, even if it has a small limit, it's considered a tier 1 card and a high value card that can be part of that 3 to 5 that you want to have. Tier 2 banks are going to be banks that you can't walk in and actually deposit money like you can at a Chase branch, right? So that's going to be American Express, Discover. Those type of banks are going to be considered tier 2, and you can have a card from them, but it needs to have a 10,000 limit or more, plus it needs to be 2 years old for it to be considered high value. Same thing with tier 3. Tier 3, that's going to be mostly the credit unions and non-deposit banks. Same thing with tier 2. You can have a high value card from a tier 3 like a credit union, but it needs to be 2 years old and have a $10,000 limit. Then last but not least, you have tier 4. You do not want any of these cards to be part of your credit profile. These are going to be the store cards and the subprime lenders like Credit One Bank. You can have a high limit on one of those cards, but because it's from a tier 4 bank, Chase is not going to give you a $10,000 limit based on that card because they look at it as like it's beneath them. So another important thing that comes to your personal credit, you want to know what's on there, right? On your file. So we always suggest that you get your tri-merge report and review it very closely. And the report that we look at is My Score IQ because it gives you your FICO score and it puts all 3 bureau reports side by side with 3 columns like you can see on the slide here. There's your TransUnion file, your Experian, and Equifax, and it has the information that they have about each account all side by side. So if you needed to dispute anything to get anything removed, you can look at this file and compare, like, okay, they're saying that the card is, was open on July 31st, but they're saying September 30th. So that's a mismatch. And because of that, that is a reason that you can get something removed. So that's why we We really highly recommend that you get your tri-merge report from MyScoreIQ, and you can go to projectfundable.com/MyScoreIQ to get that report and just review it. You want to review it to make sure that your personal information is correct. You want to review it to make sure there's no negative items that you don't know about. You want to make sure that there's no late payments that you don't know about. So you definitely want to grab your report as soon as possible. So MyScoreIQ does come with a monthly cost, but you can also get your free reports from annualcreditreport.com, and it's going to be the individual reports from each bureau. So you'll get an Experian report, you'll get a TransUnion report, and you'll get the Equifax report. And you can actually get these for free every week now, ever since COVID happened. It used to be that you can only get your Equifax once a year, your Experian once a year, and your TransUnion once a year. But now, because of COVID, people are able to get it weekly, and it's definitely worth checking, because this may have some different information. And when you're disputing things, it's also helpful to have this file or each report, because they have report numbers on them. So when you send a dispute to Equifax, you reference the report number in your dispute letter, and that way they know, okay, he's talking about this thing on this report. Yeah, he's right. We can remove that. And, that's how it gets done. If you're sending disputes without a reference to a report, it's possible that they just send a letter back saying, oh, we don't see that discrepancy or whatever it is. So it's helpful to have not only the MyFICO, the MyScoreIQ report, but it's also helpful to have these consumer reports directly from the bureaus. That way you have two sources of information. The MyScoreIQ tri-merge report is a lot quicker to read because everything's side by side, but these have so much more detail in them because they're directly from the bureau. The importance of knowing all your scores. So as I mentioned earlier, you have auto loan scores, you have mortgage scores, and you have credit card scores when it comes to FICO. And the crazy thing is that I told you about the different models that there are. There's FICO 8, there's FICO 9, there's FICO 5, 4, 2. And you'll see that here on the bottom of this slide, you see all of my personal auto scores at the time of pulling this. So this was January of this year. What a dealership will do if you go there and apply for credit to buy a car, they're going to pull all your different model scores and they're going to look for the lowest one, which in this case, my lowest one was 769. They are now going to try to find a bank that will pull this score. So my Experian 542. And that way they can get me the worst rate possible so they can make the most commission on the loan. So to avoid this, you can get myfico.com. They have a report which shows you all of this. This is where this is from. And what you do is you look up these scores. So I'm going to look at this and I see that, okay, TransUnion FICO 8 is my best score. So I'm going to start calling credit unions and banks and saying, hey, who do you pull for your auto loans? And once I find a bank that says TransUnion FICO 8, I'm going to go with them because they're going to see my 833 score and I'm going to get the absolute best rate possible. They're not, I'm going directly to the bank, so there's not going to be additional interest added to the interest rate because nobody's going to make a commission off that. The bank is the one giving out the loan. So that's how you beat the dealerships at their own game. And on top of that, it helps you avoid getting like 10 inquiries at the dealer in one day. Because again, they're running your credit through all these banks because they're trying to find out who's going to give you the worst rates so that they can make the most money. Okay, so this is like a major game changer for when you go to buy a car, and it's going to save you the most amount of money and it's going to stop you from getting screwed when you make that purchase. Okay, so earlier we talked about when you look at your report, you want to make sure that your personal information matches everywhere and that it's correct on top of that. So that's where your borrower identity comes in, and it's basically the persona that banks lend to for credit, right? They want to make sure they're lending to the right person at all times. That's why if your name doesn't match on another bureau or your name doesn't match the information that you entered on the application, when they pull your report based on your social, it may go to manual underwriting, which means a person is actually going to look at it, and that usually leads to denials and lower credit limits. Our goal is to get automatic underwriting through their algorithms, and to do that, we have to make sure that all of our information is correct and that we have no negative items. That way, their computer algorithm will just approve us, and that's how we're going to get the highest limits when we apply for stuff. So When you apply, once you fix your borrower identity and you choose your borrower identity, you have to make sure that you use it exactly the same on every single application. And that will allow you to not add additional incorrect information that you may have to remove again later. And it makes sure that the banks know who they're lending to, which again will allow you to get approved through their algorithms versus somebody reviewing your file manually. So how do you choose your borrower identity? So to do that, it's going to be based on your current documentation. So if your license and your social security card already match, then you have nothing to change. And if the address is correct and everything, you have nothing to change. But typically, what I like to tell people is you want to make sure that your social and your license just have your middle initial. And the reason for that is a lot of banks on their applications only allow you to enter your middle initial. And the problem with that is that other banks will ask you for your entire middle name. Now on your credit report, you're going to have, for example, me, Jose A. Garcia on one, and then Jose, my middle name, Garcia, is going to be another name that shows in my credit profile. I don't want that. I want one single name. So what I did was my license already said Jose A. Garcia. I had to change my social security card to say Jose A. Garcia. And then I sent a dispute letter to the bureaus telling them like, hey, remove anything but Jose A. Garcia. So now on all three bureaus, my name shows up as Jose A. Garcia. Okay. So you're going to want to do the same thing. If you can just use your middle initial, that's going to be the best case scenario. And obviously the best case scenario when it comes to your borrower identity is that your documents match and they're in the correct format and the address is correct. So this one's a little bit of a random slide, but I just wanted to outline these mistakes that I see a lot of people make when they're applying for credit or just with credit in general. So one thing is that people will get denied for a credit card and then continue applying for credit cards. You got denied for a reason. There's something wrong on your file, or your file is not strong enough for those banks to approve you. So why would you go to another bank already knowing that and trying to get credit? All you're doing is adding hard inquiries to your file, which you don't want to do. Okay. The next mistake I see people do is applying for more cards after they get a small limit. If you apply for your first card and you get $300 and then you go apply for another card like 2 months later, they're going to give you around that $300 to $500 mark. You need to build up that first credit card to a higher limit, then go get more cards with other banks, because that's the way they work. They look at another bank and say, hey, Chase was willing to give you $1,000. Okay, Chase is a big bank. We'll give you $1,000 too. So if you get that first Chase card and you build it up to $10,000, now when you go to another bank, they may give you close to that $10,000 because they said, okay, Chase gave him that much and they've been responsible with it, so we can give them that much too. The third bullet, wasting inquiries on cards you know you won't qualify for, that pretty much comes along with bullet one. But another thing is you can do pre-qualification for a lot of credit cards. Like if you just search Amex pre-qualification or Chase pre-qualification or Discover pre-qualification on Google, you will find pre-qualification URLs and forms where you can put in your information and they'll tell you whether you qualify for any of their cards without running a hard pull on your credit. And if you know they say you don't qualify for anything and you still apply for those cards, that's a dumb move on your part because you're getting inquiries and you're wasting inquiries on your file. The other thing is filling out applications incorrectly. So when you fill out an application, again, once you have your borrower identity corrected, you want to use it the same way every single time. The other thing is when you put income on your credit applications, it's based on your household income. So if you make $50,000 and your wife makes $50,000, that's $100,000 of income, household income. So you would put that on there versus just your income. So why do we need to optimize our file? Remember, we're trying to become the best borrower possible to the banks. And to do that, we need to make sure that our file is as strong as possible. The first thing you can do is have that optimal profile, which is 3 to 5 high value cards, an auto loan, and a mortgage. But we also have to increase and optimize the 5 factors of your FICO score, which is payment history, credit utilization, new credit, credit mix, and all that type of stuff, and age, right? So to do this, I'm going to show you how you guys can optimize some of these factors on your FICO score. So you can achieve the best possible profile and the most optimized profile by increasing your average credit age, which is one of the more difficult things to do, the way that you pay your credit cards, how much of your limits you use, so your credit utilization, Your borrower identity, making sure that information is all correct on all three bureaus and it's the same. Reducing the range between all your credit scores. So you want all your bureaus to be close together, the scores. If you have a collection on Equifax, then that score is going to be a lot lower than the other two, which could make banks question lending to you because they're going to be like, something's wrong over there. And then the last thing is obviously you want to clean up any negative things off your file so that you don't have collections, you don't have late payments, you don't have any of that, which are things that could lead to denials from the banks. Your credit age is a huge factor when it comes to your FICO score, and because of that, we want to make sure that the banks know you can handle credit responsibly and over time. When you apply for credit, banks are going to look back at the last 24 months to see how you've been handling the credit that you currently have. And for that reason, we want to make sure that you have great history and you actually have history. The ideal average credit age is going to be 11 years. Obviously, if you're 18 and you get your first card, that's not going to be possible. So we have to make sure that our average credit age doesn't decrease and only continues to get older. And one of the ways to do that is to avoid getting new cards at a store because they offered you 20% off. Okay. And another thing you can do is get added as an authorized user to grandparents' cards, parents' cards, friends, whatever it is, as long as they have a card that's super old and they don't use a lot of the limit and they have no late payments on it and they're responsible with the card, they can add you as an authorized user, which is going to give you a boost on your credit profile because that age is going to be inherited by your credit profile. And I wanted to go over more optimization strategies for the credit age. So we already talked about not getting store cards when they offer you a discount. We talked about adding authorized user trade lines, which could be from family members. You can also buy them. We can get those for you if you're interested in. And then you want to close any cards that are holding your age down if you don't use them. So if you just got a card, 3 months ago, and that's your youngest or newest card, and you don't use it anymore, get rid of it because now that's not going to count toward that average age of your open card. And then the other thing is when we talked about the perfect fundable profile, when you get those 3 to 5 high value cards, you want to get them all after one another. That way they will all age out together. And then you pretty much don't get on any other cards on the personal side. Everything will be done on the business side. All right, let's talk about what is the right way to pay your credit cards. As you know, payment history makes up 35% of your FICO score. There's always confusion on should I leave a balance on my card? Do I pay it in full? I always tell people the simplest answer is you want to avoid paying interest at all costs. I know that not everyone can pay their credit cards off in full every month, but if you can, you should, because interest is just money that you're throwing away and it's negative compounding interest. So the way to avoid late payments is going to be setting up auto pay on all of your credit cards for at least the minimum. If you can do the full amount, which is what I typically do that. That way you're not paying interest and you're not getting late payments on your file. You're going to get the most FICO points and avoid interest by making 2 payments on the card each month. And the way you do that is there's a statement closing date, which if you look at your credit card statement, there's going to be a date range at the top left. And the last date, the second date, is going to be when your statement closes. And that information on that statement gets reported to the credit bureaus. If you're using 50% of your credit card's limit, so $10,000 card, you're using 5,000 of it, and the statement closing date is coming up, you want to try to pay that down to $1,000 or less before that date. So when the statement closes and reports to the bureaus, it's going to show that you had less than 10% credit utilization. And then after that, you pay whatever's left on the actual due date, which should be like 15 to 25 days later. So that's how you ideally pay your credit card so that you're not getting late payments and you're getting your credit utilization in the best possible place to get the most points possible. All right, now that we've talked about how to get your personal credit in the right place to be able to get business credit, let's talk about why business credit is so useful and why we leverage that to get passive income streams and to buy assets. The most powerful aspect of this is that business credit does not report to your personal credit. So the utilization and all those things that we've talked about don't really apply to business credit. So if I go get a business credit card with $35,000 at 0% interest, I can max that card out and my personal score will not be affected at all. So that's why we like to use business credit, because we can actually use it and leverage it without it affecting our personal credit. And the best part is that it's pretty easy to get $100,000 in business credit without your business actually making any money. because business credit cards are based on your personal credit. That's why in this training, the first thing we went over was your personal credit and how to improve it. Once you do that, you can start getting business credit cards, and it's going to be all based on your personal credit. Yes, you still have a business, you need to have a business, and you have to have the EIN and stuff like that, which we'll go over in a second. But your business doesn't have to actually make any money. They ask you for anticipated revenue, and you can put $250,000 that you're anticipating to make that year, and they're not gonna argue that. If you do have a real business and it's functioning and it's bringing in money, that is the key to having pretty much unlimited access to funding from banks. Because if your business makes money and they see that you have good credit, they will give you whatever money you need to do whatever you need to do. There are several types of business credit that you can actually take advantage of, but in this training, we're focusing on the credit card side of things. But I still wanted to mention the different types of business credit in case you join Project Fundable and you get further into actually obtaining funding, you can see what type of funding you can actually get. So the first one is credit cards. Like I said, that's what we're going to cover in this training. No recourse credit cards. So there are credit cards where you don't need to use your personal credit, and there's no recourse. So if something happened with that credit card and you couldn't pay it off, it will not affect your personal credit. Lines of credit are the next business product that I think are the most useful and most versatile, because it acts like a checking account and a loan where, let's say you get a 50,000 line of credit, you can pull 20,000 from it, do whatever you have to do with it, pay it back. Now you have 50,000 again that you can pull from and do whatever you have to do with it. So those are the most flexible. They're good for buying real estate. Business loans are definitely useful if you're going to buy a franchise or any type of thing like that. Equipment financing, if you have a construction business or something like that and you need equipment, that's where that will come in handy. Vehicle financing, if you have a Turo business or anything like that, you can use that type of financing. And vendor credit are net 30 accounts with, things like Uline where they sell supplies for warehouses and stuff. So you can definitely use that if you have a business in distribution or where you have a warehouse and do e-commerce. So to get business credit, you want to have a fundable business. And how do you establish a fundable business? You're going to want to do this before you try to get business credit. The first thing you do is create an LLC. To create the LLC, you're going to need a business address. Typically, we suggest a virtual address. The biggest thing is that you have to make sure whatever business address you end up getting, if it's a virtual office, that it's in a building that looks like it would house legitimate businesses. The whole key to this thing is you want your business to look legitimate, like it's an actual business being run with employees and stuff, to the bank, so that if they ever search your company address, they look at this super nice building on Wall Street and it's like, okay, yeah, that looks like a legitimate business would be run out of there. The next thing you do is you get your EIN. That's your employer identification number. It's like your business's social security number, which is going to be used on credit applications. Your Dun & Bradstreet number is what you'll apply for next. That is a business credit bureau, Dun & Bradstreet, and you get a number from them so you can have a business credit profile with them. The next thing is you want to get listed everywhere. You want to have a website, you want to have a Google My Business page, a Bing business page, Yellow Pages, Yelp, all that kind of stuff. You want to be everywhere so that, again, when a bank looks up your business, you're everywhere and you look like you're actually established and legitimate. Then you open a business bank account because you want to have everything separate from your personal finances. You open merchant accounts so you can actually collect money from people with credit cards. So you can do Stripe, you can do Square, whatever it is. And then that's when you can, once you have all of that stuff established, that's when you can start getting access to credit. So now let's get into the juicy stuff. So that's business credit card funding. This is going to be the quickest way that you can get access to credit, because you can get business credit cards within 7 to 14 days, and you can get up to $100,000 in 0% interest in that 7 to 14 day period. To get the maximum amount of funding, to be able to get 100,000 or more in one shot, you are going to want to have a 720 plus credit score. You're going to have the business established like we talked about on the last slide. You're going to want to have no negative items on your credit file. You're going to have primary accounts, so that means credit cards that you personally own on your file with big limits. You want to have at least 5,000, but ideally cards with $10,000 limits before you do this process if you're trying to get the most possible. Can you get some money without meeting all of this criteria? Sure, but it's going to be a lot less, and there is the possibility that you don't get approved for a lot of things. You want to make sure that all the credit cards you have on your personal file are being used less than 10% of the limit before you do these applications. And the other thing is you want to have 0 to 1 inquiry per bureau. So that means 1 or less on Equifax, 1 or less on Experian, 1 or less on TransUnion to get the maximum amount possible. So how do we get $100,000 in business credit in one day? We do that through what's called an application sequence. So when you see people offering funding, what they're doing is really just applying for credit cards for you in a certain order and going until you get denied. And then that's what they say, okay, this is how much we were able to get you. Basically, you have up to 3 inquiries per bureau that you can use to apply for credit in one day. If you have no inquiries, right? Like what we said on the last slide. So we take advantage of that by finding banks that pull from this bureau, banks that pull from this other bureau, and then banks that pull from the other bureau. Now you can apply to 3 banks over here with this bureau, 3 with that bureau, and 3 with that bureau. And now that's how you can get 9 to 10 cards in one day. Most of these funding companies are going to charge you a percent of what they get you, and it's usually 10% plus sometimes they charge an upfront fee. And what they do is they try to get you as much as possible because they're taking 10% of it. We always suggest that if you're going to use an application sequence, understand that you're going to get a lot of inquiries in one day and you can potentially remove them. But if you get approved, we don't suggest you remove inquiries. And on top of that, that's going to stop you from being able to get funded for like another 6 to 12 months. So we tell people only get what you need. If you only need 30,000 to start the business that you're trying to start, whether it's like Amazon FBA or Shopify or whatever it is, just get to 30,000 because then that means you only use maybe 2 to 3 inquiries to get that 30,000. And now you still have 6 available so that if 6 months down the line, you need to expand that Shopify or Amazon FBA business, you can go get more credit and you're going to get approved. And the other thing is the best way to get 0% interest cards is on the business side. We don't really want to get cards on the personal side because we optimize our file with the 3 to 5 high value cards. And we want those to just age out altogether. Here's my personal funding sequence that I did about 2 years ago. I was able to get 134,000 in one day with 9 credit cards. These are all the credit cards that I got that day, along with the limits. The last 3 are charge cards, so they don't really have limits. They have what's called spending power, and that's something that you build up as you use the card. So these all had about 50 to 80,000 in spending power when I got them, but the Plum card and some of those other ones, I was able to grow those to like 350,000 because I was using them for my Amazon. So how exactly do you do an application sequence? So these are the steps that we're going to go through this. You want to meet the requirements that I outlined 2 slides ago, which does 720 credit score, no negative items, all of that stuff. You're going to want to continue to fill out applications while doing an application sequence until you get the money that you wanted. Let's say you only wanted 30 grand, you stop after 30. Or you receive 2 denials in a row when you apply for some of these cards. At that point, you want to stop because that means you're probably going to get denied going forward and you don't want to keep wasting inquiries. So the steps are identify the credit card products you want to obtain based on their 0% interest period. So what I would do is go find all the business credit cards that are 0% interest, find the ones that are the longest time for 0% interest. So some will be 15 months, some will be 12, some will be 9. I'm going to go for the 15-month ones first. Then I would look at getting the 12-month ones. So you make a list of all the cards that you potentially want to get the credit that you need. Then you want to find out what bureaus the banks pull that offer that card. So if Amex pulls TransUnion, you want to find that out if you're going to get Amex cards. You want to get 2 Chase business cards at 0%. You want to find out who Chase pulls, which is Experian. To find out who they pull, you can look at just Google credit pulls credit board, and that will tell you. There's some old data in there. Sometimes it's getting updated, but that's going to be your best source unless you're in the Project Fundable program where we are building our own database where our members apply for cards and tell us like, hey, this is who they pulled, and they give us a ton of other information to put in that database so that you can have an idea of what it's going to take to get the cards that you want. The next thing you want to do is check the bank credit card application rules. Some banks will not let you get 2 cards in one day. Chase has a 524 rule, which means if you have 5 new cards opened in the last 24 months, you'll get automatically denied when you apply for one of their cards. So you want to check the rules based on the cards that you're planning to get from the list you created in step 1. Then you want to determine your order of the applications. So you're going to want to know, like, okay, Amex is very inquiry insensitive, which means they don't really care. US Bank cares a lot about inquiries. So you'll probably want to do US Bank first if one of their cards is on your list of cards to get. So determine the order of how you're going to do it. Then you just begin applying for the cards in that order. It's really that simple. That's why we teach this. I mean, we go more in depth to it in the program, but this is why we teach people this, because there's no reason for you to pay an upfront fee plus 10% on the back end of what a funding company gets you when you can do this all yourself. So what do we do once we have all of this credit and all the money that we've gotten through the credit cards? Well, that's when you can start a new business. That's one thing you can do. You can start flipping sneakers. You can do drop shipping, Shopify. You can start a Turo business. You can start a credit repair agency by buying somebody's systems that are already established. They can duplicate that for you and you can start a credit repair business like that. You can start a party rental business, right? You can get the floors, you can get chairs, tables, and start that business. And because you can leverage 0% interest money from the cards, you have time to work on the business and grow it. All you have to do is make the payments throughout that 12-month period, but that's usually going to be like 1 to 2% of the balance. If you have no experience in those businesses, you want to start small and work your way up. Don't just because you have 50,000 in credit lines and you want to start a party rental business doesn't mean you should go all out, right? Use Facebook Marketplace, use Google My Business, and test the demand for what you're trying to start in your area before you go all in. Okay, that's something I suggest. Then some passive income opportunities that you can invest this 0% credit in are things that we've personally done or offer. So you have Amazon automation, Facebook automation, Walmart automation, all these automation businesses where you pay an upfront fee. The people who have experience doing these businesses will set up a store for you or a business for you. They will run it for you and they keep a percentage of the profits and you get the rest. So it's a passive income investment. These are things you can get into with 0% interest business credit. I'm sure you guys have seen ads for all this stuff all the time now on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So this is something that you can get into if you leverage the 0% interest business credit. All right, so that covers pretty much most of the training. The last thing I want to do is go over the free credit tracker tool that we gave you when you signed up for the training. And I just want to show you how it works. So there's already some values input in here, but this is just a tool that is going to allow you to track several things. So the first one is a credit card inventory tracker. This is where you're going to want to track your personal cards and any business credit cards that you have here. So if you have 2 businesses, you can track both. But what you typically do is we have a list of banks that we typically get cards from, and we've already pre-populated the tier, like what tier that bank is. So if you choose Amex, you're going to see it's automatically going to put tier 2, and then you can put the name of the card. Do you own it? Do you own it with someone else? Or are you just an authorized user? When did you open it? What's your current balance, the credit limit, and anything in gray is automatically calculated for you. So you'll also put your statement reporting date or closing date so that you know when to make that payment before it reports to the bureaus. The age of the card is automatically going to be calculated here. If there's an annual fee, it will also automatically calculate when that annual fee is next due. So it'll tell you a year from now, you're going to have to pay that $95 annual fee. So that's the first tab on the spreadsheet. The next one is MyScore IQ report audit. So you can grab your MyScore IQ report by clicking this link, and then you'll come in here and just fill in all of these tabs, which is just a way to let you know like where you currently stand. So if you have negative accounts, you'll put the number of negative accounts here and all of the other information you'll put here. The last thing is a credit score tracker, which you just enter your credit scores from each bureau each month, which you can get from myfico.com. You can get it from MyScoreIQ, and it's just going to chart it for you. So that is the credit score tracker, the MyScoreIQ audit, and the card inventory. So that's what makes up the free credit tracker. All right, the last thing I want to do before we end the training is to go over our Project Fundable program. So if you found this training useful, we go a lot more in depth and you'll have your mind blown by the Project Fundable program. It's 7+ hours of video modules with everything you need to know about how to fix your personal credit, how to optimize your personal credit, how to get funding, how to establish your business correctly, how to buy a shelf corp so that if you want to get a business that already has age on it, how to establish that correctly. We give you all the templates for credit repair. We give you all of the custom built tools. So there's like a more advanced version of that credit tracker tool. We have a business credit builder tool that we give you, and you get exclusive lifetime access to our Discord community so that you can ask us questions whenever you have a question while you're going through the program, or even after, while you're going through the process of implementing what you learn in the program. And if you take action today by clicking the button below this video that should have popped up by now, you can get $100 off using coupon code 100OFF. On the next page, Justin, my partner, once you click that button below, he will go through exactly what's included in the Project Fundable program. And again, if you'd like to join and you take action today, you can get $100 off by using the coupon code 100OFF on the next page.